live and you can hear me. I am going to assume that you can. So, greetings, everyone. My name is Zoe Weil. I am the co founder and president of the Institute for Humane Education. Very grateful to Lucy and the team at GLOW and to all of you who are here, and excited to share some thoughts with you. So, I'm going to share a story that I shared before. So, if, oh, I am I just saw something that's, oh, good. We're all good. I have to look in the chat to see if we're all good. So, sounds like we are. So, I'm going to share a story I've told before. And if you've heard it, apologies for sharing it again. But if there are new teachers listening to this, I want to share this story. So, when I was in college, I was dating a medical student. And one day he said to me that he thought that being a physician was the most noble profession. And I remember feeling really irritated when he said it. And that was for two reasons. One, I had gone to college pre med and I had abandoned that path. So I was probably feeling a little bit defensive. The other reason was that I thought it was silly to rate professions based on their nobility. But the comment has stayed with me for all of these decades. And every time I have reflected upon that comment, while I still think that it's silly to rate professions based on their nobility, if I were pressed to say, what is the most noble profession? I would not hesitate to say teaching. And the reason is because there is no other profession that holds the future in its hands. Teachers shape every other profession. They shape the future. And so I just want to thank you, if you are a teacher, for doing what you do, because it is noble and it is so important. As Mahatma Gandhi once said, if we are to achieve real peace in the world, we shall have to begin with the children. So I want to tell you a little bit about my story of becoming an educator, specifically a humane educator. So humane educators teach about the interconnected issues of human rights and animal protection and environmental sustainability. And the goal is to prepare young people to be conscientious choice makers and engaged change makers for a more peaceful and just and healthy world for all. So I had a fairly circuitous path toward this profession. And it wasn't until I was in graduate school and I was looking for a summer job. And I found this program at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia that offered week-long courses to middle school students. And I pitched a whole bunch of courses. And one of those courses was on environmental issues and one was on animal issues. One was also on media literacy, but it didn't run because not enough kids registered to learn how to watch television critically, which is what the course was really about. But the animal issues course was the second most popular of the 60 courses that were offered that summer. And what happened each day of that week is I would teach the students about things that we were doing to animals in our society and what we could do to help animals. And one day I taught about product testing on animals. And that's where we drip everything from oven cleaner to cosmetics to shampoo into the eyes of conscious rabbits. And we force feed animals quantities of these substances meant to kill them. And we smear these substances on their abraded skin, all for testing. And this one boy went home that night and he made his own homemade leaflets. And when I say he made his own homemade leaflets, this was in 1987. He did not have a personal computer. He hand wrote his leaflets. And he came back into class the next day with a stack of them and he wanted to hand them out. He had become a change maker overnight. So the rest of us were having lunch. He was standing on a Philadelphia street corner handing out his leaflets. Now, two of the other kids who were in that class started a Philadelphia area-wide student group called SPARE, Students Protecting Animals' Rights in the Environment. And they went on to win awards for their work. And I stayed in touch with both of them, and they are now in their 50s, which is shocking to me. One of them went on to work in the mayor's office in New York, many consecutive mayors after all of these decades. And he's worked on HIV and AIDS issues for the mayor. So a number of years ago, it's probably almost 20 years ago now, I was invited to New York to give a talk with Jane Goodall. And so I invited David, the one who works for the mayor's office, to see if he wanted to come. It had been years since I had seen him. So he came, and after it was over, I introduced him to some of my friends. And as I was introducing him and saying that he was in the first humane education course I ever taught, he interjected, "That course changed my life." So that course also changed my life because that's when I realized the power of education to enliven, enlighten, and energize young people to learn more, to care more, to feel compassion, and to act for change. So that's my story. And I want to tell you a little bit about what I am seeing these days and then get into what we can do about it. So I'm going to tell you some very recent stories. So 3 weeks ago, I was invited to a high school not far from where I live in rural Maine. And this is a high school in a very small city of nearly 10,000 people. It's a working class city. And I asked these kids if they thought that our world would be better in their lifetimes, would be more just, more sustainable, more humane, more peaceful. And of the 20 kids in that group, not a single one of them raised their hands. Not a single one of them thought the world was going to be better in their lifetimes. So back in May, also of this year, I was invited to speak to high school students at a private girls' school in New York City. So a very different demographic. And of the few hundred students in that room, maybe 20% thought that things would get better, but most did not. Now, this isn't new. Lots of young people have been trending toward feeling a sense of doom and anxiety and even despair for quite a while. So I'm going to tell you another story. This one happened about 12 years ago. I was invited to speak to fifth and sixth graders at a school in Connecticut. And I asked these kids to tell me what they thought were the biggest problems in the world. And their answers filled a whiteboard. And they said the same things that adults would say. So one boy even said sex trafficking. He was in fifth or sixth grade. He was not being taught about that at school. So then I asked these kids to raise their hands if now, or if they could imagine us solving the problems that they listed on the whiteboard. And of the 45 children in that classroom, only 5 raised their hand. Only 5 could even imagine us solving the problems they listed. And that was such a wake-up call. That was really when I started to see this shift. And I realized that I needed to do something in order to restore their hope. And I'm going to tell you what I did, because this does not have to be our new normal. And that's what the rest of this presentation is going to be about. So what I did in that moment was to ask them all to close their eyes and to take some deep breaths. And I led them in a guided visualization that went like this. I asked them to imagine that they were very old and approaching the end of a very long and well-lived life. And I asked them to picture themselves sitting on a park bench on a beautiful day, and the air was clean and the waterways around them were clean and the birds were singing, and there hadn't been a war in as long as they could remember. And nobody went to bed hungry. And we'd learned to treat each other and other species with respect and compassion. And then I asked them to imagine a child coming up and joining them on the park bench. And the child has been learning about history in school and wanting to know, how did everything change for the better? And the child asks lots of questions. And then the child asks a final question. What role did you play in helping to bring about this better world? What did you do? So while the kids still had their eyes closed, and while they were reflecting on what they would say in this guided visualization to a child coming up to them at the end of their life asking, what did they do to make the world better? I asked them to raise their hands if now they could imagine us solving the problems they listed on the whiteboard. And this time 40 hands went up in the air. All it took to restore their hope was a vision of a better world and knowing that they played a part in its creation. So, 2 more stories. A few years later, I was invited to speak at a school in association with a conference in Guadalajara, Mexico that I was speaking at. So I get to the school that's hosting the event and they say, will you come talk to the 5th graders? So I hadn't prepared, but I was thinking about those kids in Connecticut. So when I went in to see this group of 5th graders, I asked them to raise their hands if they thought we could solve the problems in the world. And every hand flew up in the air immediately. What was different? What was different is that their teacher had been teaching them in age-appropriate ways about problems, specifically environmental problems, and they had been involved in finding solutions to those problems. So their own school had installed solar panels, they had created a composting system for their food waste, they were using reusable water bottles and filling up from filtered water jugs rather than using disposable water bottles. They knew problems could be solved because they were learning to be solutionaries. And I'll get into that word in just a minute. So one more story. Last year, there were some students doing a solutionary project in Chile. And these were high school students. And after they finished the project, they said that before doing the project, they believed that theirs was going to be the last generation on Earth. After doing the project, they had hope that we could solve our problems. So this has to become the new normal. We need to educate a generation of solutionaries. So let's start with what a solutionary is. So a solutionary is somebody who can identify unjust, unsustainable, and inhumane systems and transform them in ways that do the most good and the least harm for everyone. And by everyone, I mean people, animals, and the environment. So you can see by that definition that there is this ethical foundation baked into the word, which is why a solutionary is not the same as a problem solver. So somebody can solve the problem of blowing up a mountaintop or coal removal or damming a river. They're not solutionaries because they're not doing the most good and the least harm for everyone. Now, a solutionary is also not the same as a humanitarian. Humanitarians come in to relieve suffering and harm when there has been a disaster or somebody doesn't have enough food to eat, and we need humanitarians. But if we don't also have solutionaries, we're going to need humanitarians forever. Solutionaries address the root and systemic causes of problems. So, in order to sort of reinforce the power of educating a generation of solutionaries, I'm going to show you a 90-second video. So if you could cue up, let's educate a generation of solutionaries.
Sometimes the world's problems can feel overwhelming. And it often seems like we can't agree on anything. But we know how to look at problems and solve them, don't we, Poppy? Take a look through these solutionary lenses. Solutionaries see how problems connect to one another. They do research. They map out the systems that perpetuate problems, learn about who is harmed and who benefits, and engage in some serious critical thinking. Then, they come up with solutions that do the most good and least harm to people, animals, and the environment. They also look for ways that they can personally make a difference. I've got great news. There are solutionaries all over the world. But imagine if there were more. Imagine if we educated a generation of solutionaries. By making schools and communities solutionary focused, we can set everyone on a path toward effectively and enthusiastically solving challenges wherever they find them.
So that's the vision. So how do we go about doing this? So at the Institute for Humane Education, which is the organization that I co-founded, and there's going to be a lot of speakers at this conference from the Institute. So you can learn from a variety of people who are doing all sorts of different work all around the world to educate a generation of solutionaries. We have created a solutionary framework. So if we could pull up that slide, that would be great. So this is a 4-phase process to help students become solutionaries. And it is a very flexible process that we are training teachers to use. And they are integrating this framework into their classes from mostly middle school and high school, but also early education and well beyond. And they're doing it in a range of settings, in a range of schools, in a range of courses and subject categories. So the 4-phase process is pretty simple. The first phase is to identify the problem you want to solve. The second phase is to investigate it thoroughly, really understand from stakeholders what is causing this problem, what's been done to solve it. The third phase is innovating a solution, and then finally implementing a solution or part of that solution. So a very simple process. And it's simple to remember, it's simple to think about, and it's rigorous to actually go through. And we have students and teachers who have learned this framework all over the world. We're now in about 56 countries where teachers are using this with their students, and tens of thousands of students are using this framework. And what they're developing are really profound thinking skills coupled with a sense of compassion and care. So, what are the thinking skills that they're developing? Ethical thinking, critical thinking, systems thinking, strategic thinking, and creative thinking, which together form solutionary thinking. So, the way we've been going about bringing this framework to others is we have a solutionary micro credential course. And teachers are taking this course from around the globe, and they are then using the course to create their own implementation plan for bringing this to their students. And there's coaching and facilitation that goes along with it. So if you're thinking, I want to do this and I want to hear more, but I want to do this, just go to our website, humaneeducation.org, and you'll find loads of free downloadable resources at our website, including lesson and unit plans and videos like the one you just saw. And you'll also find the Solutionary Microcredential course. And if you're really eager to dive as deep as possible into humane education, we have online graduate programs with Antioch University. We have a certificate program, master's degree programs, and a doctoral program specializing in humane education. So soup to nuts, we've got you covered if you go to our website. And I've also written some books that may be useful. I wrote a book called The World Becomes What You Teach, and that's for educators. And then a book for anybody who wants to be a solutionary called The Solutionary Way. And there's If you go to the shop at Glow, you'll see there's a coupon there too for getting a discount on that book. So I want to talk a little bit about the challenge of bringing up controversial issues and how this solutionary framework meets that challenge. So in the United States, there's always been an aversion to controversy, and I'm sure that that's true in other countries as well. But that aversion to controversy, that fear of it, has escalated. Here's the beautiful thing about the solutionary framework. It's it's like an antidote to polarization and division, because what it seeks to do is to have students identify real problems, and they can be problems right in their own school, right in their own community. And it is a bridge building process to collaborate on a real problem and to then reach out to a variety of stakeholders to hear a range of perspectives on that problem before coming up with a solution. And I'm going to give you two examples about how the solutionary framework has worked right out of the gate for some students. But before I do, I want to say a little bit about debate. In the United States, debate is really common as a way of thinking about how, about really almost any issue. So the debate format and in schools and the debate concept in our politics and in our media is so prevalent that what happens is that any issue can be turned into two sides, even though it is very rare that an issue only has two sides. So I'm going to give you an example of a time when I first had this realization that we could do better. And that was when I was driving in my car and I was listening to the radio and I heard an ad for a debate that was going to be held at New York University through a program called Intelligence Squared. And the debate topic was whether or not the United States was responsible for Mexico's drug wars. And I remember feeling startled when I heard it, that something as complex as that could be reduced to an either or, and that experts would be brought in and the audience would listen to these experts who were going to be pro and anti this fabricated either or question. And then they were going to vote on who won. And I remember thinking how much more valuable it would have been to bring in experts to talk about how we could solve this problem and also to talk about what are the underlying causes of this problem. So economic causes, educational causes, issues of addiction, and how could we address those underlying causes? So when we bring this solutionary mindset to problems, the concept of one side or another begins to dissipate as we work to actually solve the problem. So I'm going to tell you those two stories about the solutionary framework working right out of the gate for some students. So there was a student who, when asked what is the problem you want to solve, he wanted to solve the problem of immigrants taking jobs away from people in his community. So his teacher, trusting this process, of course, and not wanting to direct students to choose problems that she thought were the most important, helped him to start investigating. And what he quickly learned was that immigrants weren't taking jobs away from people in his community. And in fact, there weren't enough people to take to actually fulfill the jobs that were necessary in his community. So he came back to his class and he explained what he learned and he changed his problem statement. So that was 2 years ago. Last year, something similar happened. A boy in a rural community in the United States wanted to address the problem of infringement on Second Amendment rights. That is the right to bear arms. So again, his teacher supporting him in learning more about the problem he wanted to address led him to start investigating and doing the research. And when he did that research, what he learned was there really wasn't a threat to Second Amendment rights. And there was a much bigger problem, which was gun violence. And he switched the problem he wanted to address because of that. So this process helps students to think really critically and to investigate really deeply. And I want to say a few things about how it helps them to come up with truly solutionary solutions. So if we could have the rubric, the graph put up, that would be great. Thank you. So we've developed this graph to help people assess the solutionariness of their solution. And there's an x-axis and a y-axis. And what students are going to do is they're going to be examining how well does their solution address the root and or systemic causes of this problem. In other words, is it really addressing the problem at a causal level, or is it more humanitarian in nature? They're also going to be addressing how well their solution does the most good and the least harm for everyone, again, for people, for animals, and for the environment. And as they look at how their solution is answering these questions, they will be able to move greater and greater in the direction of a more solutionary solution. So that's the solutionary framework. It's great for dispelling controversy. And what are the effects on students themselves? So I'm going to ask you to show the next video, then and now. And before I show it, I just want to say a little background for it. So students who were in the original pilot for the solutionary program in 2018, there were a handful of teachers in the state of Maine who went through our training and brought solutionary learning to their students. And one of them was Katie Coppins, a 6th grade teacher in Falmouth, Maine. And we caught up with those students 6 years later when they were seniors to find out how that single 6-week unit impacted them. Let's watch the video.
As a teacher, you never know what's going to resonate with your students. So when my former 6th graders came back as seniors, it was amazing to hear the information that they remembered, but also the moments that they remembered, and just how much it, in very small and big ways, shifted their way of looking at problems, looking at the world, and looking at the actions they can take.
It was such a big moment for me in 6th grade to go from sitting at a desk and writing things out that the teacher's telling me to hands-on, I'm learning this and I'm choosing my way to go about this.
It helps open and broaden your horizon on global issues, which I think is very important because at such a young age, you don't quite realize the impact that you can have. You think, oh, I'm too young and I don't have that much of a voice, but I think it really helps you realize that you do have the ability to help and make a change.
I want to do something now that I want to help people, so maybe something in like the medical field, and that was definitely stemmed from my service that I did in middle school, and specifically the Solutionary Project.
It's really important for kids to think critically about the things they see in the world and how they can make a difference, and when they look to the future to think about what difference they want to make rather than what they want to be.
I would say that this program has informed me as someone who's interested in creating a more fair and equitable society, and one that really embraces people from all different backgrounds and all different perspectives. And so being able to look at a problem from multiple lenses, I think, will be very beneficial.
We were looking up places that do fast fashion and use that, and I remember sitting there being like, oh my gosh, like I'm part of the problem and I want to be part of the solution, not the problem.
Those skills of not seeing a problem as just surface level, like really going down into the weeds of why is this happening, what can be done. Those are really good skills just to have to analyze any problems in the future.
I definitely think it influenced what I want to do in the future. I'm really interested in political science and different issues like healthcare and women and gender issues.
Your effort that you put in will eventually lead to some form of success, whether it be through learning what does and doesn't work, or to give students, the idea that they can achieve what matters to them. They can make a change in the issues that are important in their lives.
At the end of the project, we got to watch different schools and different high schoolers and middle schoolers, and there were kids from all age present their different topics, and there was every topic you can kind of imagine, and that was just really impactful because I hadn't really learned about a lot of those topics yet.
Now I'm more aware of different issues than I would have been if I hadn't have done this project. And when there's one that I'm maybe passionate about or that I care about deeply, I try to take my own action as well as talk to other people and let them know about it and see if they want to take action with me.
In addition to giving problem-solving skills and looking at things critically, it's had a large impact on what I want to be and what I see myself doing in the future.
I'm going to keep doing this type of work because the world is going to continue to have local and global problems, and it's essential that we help students know that there's something they can do about them, that their voice and their actions matter.
I love watching that. I hope you enjoyed it as well. So I want to start wrapping up, and I want to do so with a guided visualization for you. So I shared the guided visualization I did with those 5th and 6th grade students in Connecticut. So if you would just take a moment to sit comfortably and close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. I'd like you to imagine that you're at the end of your career. You've retired from teaching, and you can picture yourself on a beautiful day outdoors. And in a circle sitting with you are some of the students who you have taught over the years. And they've come to gather with you because they want to thank you. Their lives have been changed for the better because of you. They're making a difference in the world because of you. And they're there to tell you what you meant to them and the impact that you have. So I'm going to give you about a minute to just imagine the things that they've said. So I know I'm not giving you enough time to listen in your imagination, but I hope that you will continue to listen and to continue to teach in ways that will make ever-growing numbers of people ultimately want to thank you. So I have one more video to show to you. It's just a minute long, and it's meant to leave you with some inspiration. So if we can show our last video.
This hand will scale up tidal energy to address climate change. This hand will help draft your country's foreign policy to reduce conflict. This hand will inspire societies to embrace the compassionate treatment of animals. This one will set the new legal standard in the protection of human rights. This hand will provide farmers with regenerative systems to keep food healthy. This hand will help ensure equal access to education. This one will protect endangered species. This hand will help prevent cancer, will address income inequality, protect our environment.
When I imagine a generation of solutionaries, I truly can see the grave problems that we face in the world being solved. And I can see young people vibrant and joyful and prepared not only for whatever they face in the present, but prepared for whatever they will face in the future and ready to build a future where all life can flourish. So thank you so much for being here today. You know, when you look into a camera, you can't see who's there. And so I wanted to leave some time for there to be questions that I obviously will look in the chat for and to answer any of those. And again, thank you so much for being here and thank you for teaching. It matters so much. Okay, time to put on my glasses so I can read the chat. I'm thinking about how much this overlaps with the Global Issues Network best practices for schools. I see a lot of overlap in similar thinking. Also, the guiding principle at Catalyst Exchange. Very cool. Thank you, James. And yeah, we have friends at GIN and some of my favorite educators. There's a lot of overlap, and it's so beautiful that so many of us are doing this work. Oh, thank you, Ellen and Emily. I really appreciate that. And Gina, so appreciate your comments. And Star, thank you. Thank you, Susan. Any other questions? Well, if there are no other questions, I will turn it back over to Glow and we can all get ready for the next sessions. There's 2 sessions coming up from members of our team. There's a session by the director of our K-12 and teacher education, Julie Meltzer, and another session from our Latin American teachers in Spanish. So I'm excited for that. And thank you, Hyung. Thank you for being here. And thank you. Hyung is going to be giving a presentation. Emily in the chat's going to be giving a presentation. I'm probably missing others. And Betsy, thank you for sharing all of the links throughout all of this. These are incredible members of our team, and I'm so glad to work with all of them. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.